Okay. Hi, my name is Sarah. Thank you so much for having me on. I run the page Too Wild to Tame. My name on here is Sarah of the Norse. I'm a pagan spiritualist, conspiracy theorist, TikToker who really enjoys reading and researching and getting to the bottom of things. And I really enjoy sharing that information with other people. And I obviously am really excited about the UFO and disclosure conversation that's happening right now everywhere. Yeah, and so I think it's important we bring it to the forefront.
And I first came across you on TikTok. I was scrolling through and I seen the recent video you did about aliens. It was about the alien body, and I absolutely loved it. I was like, I need to talk to her. I need to figure out what's going on because this is something I've been doing now for probably about, give or take, maybe like a year or so.
Okay,
Um,
sure.
but yeah, I got into the conspiracies and I just dove face first into it and I loved it. So I seen that you've been a little bit into
Yes,
it as
absolutely.
well.
So this started for me back, of course, during COVID, because for whatever reason, that's when like all the spiritual awakenings happened.
Yeah.
I went through like a complete change of person, right? And within that time frame, I really got into paganism and spirituality, which led me down the rabbit hole of some of the conspiracy theories that kind of are floating around out there. And it became really, really apparent to me that at least a lot of the channeled work, especially that I was reading, was directly related with the UFO and the ET conversation. Like you can't separate the two from one another based on the implications, right? Like as soon as we find out that there's actual extraterrestrials, it impacts everybody's perspective of that. And that just kind of grew from there. And so I've got this page, which is my Too Wild to Tame page. And I actually, before that, I had another page called The Golden Thread of Truth that was all about aliens and contact and the cycles of life that happen here on this planet and what it means to be a part of the cosmic community. And so I've been in it for like, I guess a little while now. It's kind of weird to look back on, but yeah, so I'm really excited to be here and be able to talk to somebody else about it.
Absolutely, yeah. So when you got into UFOs, have you ever had a UFO experience yourself?
I haven't. And it's one of the things that I think is a multi-layered conversation, right? And part of it is that I don't know that I've put myself in enough experiences and situations where it really makes sense for me to have had contact. I have had experiences in my life of lost time though, and
Okay.
based off of channeled information and Dolores Cannon and all that, we can sometimes make some assumptions about what's happening in that lost time.
Mhm.
And I'd love to go in and get like a quantum hypnosis healing to find out. But as of right now, nothing conscious. But I'm really interested in right now getting together some CE5s with other like-minded people in super remote areas where we could potentially actually make contact in our own, individual group way. So that's definitely on the agenda.
So Tom DeLonge had talked a little bit about his theory, essentially of where he kind of thinks that we're all like a radio antenna, and the aliens are not coming from outer space, but more so coming from different dimensions. And he thinks that it's almost like a time warp, essentially, because the best way for me to describe it is that we have to think of time as a record. And so when you look at a record, let me grab one actually. At a record, right? Normally it's going to play from the outside and then move its way in. However, if we flip flop it like space, and space is going to pull in every single direction, time would
Mm-hmm.
then run this way. And so each line that we're going to see is a year, and space is getting pulled in a separate direction. So then essentially, we would be able to like time warp through the years. All the time exists
Right.
like forward and back. Um,
Right. But the whole idea of like in the fourth dimension, that time is a 3D object that you can hold and kind of jump from one space to another on.
yeah.
Absolutely. I find that conversation fascinating, especially revolving around the idea of aliens, because people seem to think that aliens come from other planets and that they're all within this like realm of existence, this 3D dimension. And right, we're finding more and more out from people like Tom DeLonge, but also from leaked information from government portals that it literally is interdimensional. It is not coming from other planets in this place, or it's interdimensional coming from places within the Earth or within, other planets that are within our solar system, but they aren't here in the same sense that we want to think of that.
Right.
Which I think is a fascinating concept around the consciousness conversation and that field of consciousness and being able to understand and manipulate that. And what you said about humans being like probes or like radio antenna,
Yes.
100%. I think that is so real, and I think that's like why so much channeling and remote viewing and these alternative forms of communication that we can have through the dimensions, why those work, because our bodies themselves are radios and like can do so many really cool things. There are tools in this lifetime. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. So manifesting, is that a thing? That's 100% for you, or no?
So I think that manifesting is often used in some questionable ways. I think
Yeah.
that people really want to like manipulate this reality and manipulate the life that they chose to come into. And
Hmm.
like maybe that's for you, that's great. But I do think that manifestation, at least on a subconscious level, happens constantly. I'm a massage therapist, and
Okay.
something that I notice in the people that I work on is that chronic pain, can sometimes present itself as the law of attraction made manifest in the body,
Oh,
where we have this traumatic experience, we have this horrible thing that happens, and it does cause us pain. We're in pain for a while. But at some point along that road, we like begin to identify that with who we are as a person and our personality. And we start to absorb all these stories about how, oh, well, my body just doesn't function right. And I'm just always in pain. And God just screwed this. And they just get all grumpy, right?
yeah.
And the more thought patterns that they have around that, the worse that their pain gets and the longer that their pain goes along. And what they've found in scientific studies on pain analysis is that the only thing that correlates to high levels of pain is your relationship to your body, your trust with your body. It doesn't matter what your scans look like. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. It doesn't matter how you got injured. You could have people with all the exact same situations as far as the injury goes, but completely different life situations, and their pain is completely different. Does that
Interesting.
make sense?
Yeah, very. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
Um, so you talked a little bit in one of your videos too about a mind movie, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, can you go into a little bit on that? I'm interested. I seen that and I was like, okay, I'm super
Absolutely.
curious.
So this is from Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is amazing. So he wrote the book Becoming Supernatural, and you can find him all over YouTube. But essentially, what a lot of his research shows as a doctor, and I think he was a chiropractor, was that you can program yourself to heal yourself, to design your own life. This law of attraction, this manifestation, all of that was like baked into the theories that he was talking about.
Okay.
And so he would guide you through these meditations where you literally like shrink down to a microscopic level, and then you go into your injury and you heal yourself inside your body. And it's like totally mind blowing. And one of the things that he suggests utilizing to assist in this process is a mind movie. And mind movies can be used for all kinds of things, any kind of manifestation that you want to do, or life design, or timeline shift, any of it. And you can find pre programmed ones, or you can make your own. But he's got a website, you go to it. It's a 3 to 5 minute long video that is filled with images, text, songs, things that emotionally fire you up in
Mhm.
the way that you want to be emotionally fired up. So if you're trying to manifest abundance, you're looking for that, oh my God, I feel so abundant and I feel so supported by the universe and I don't have to worry about anything. You're looking for things that give you that emotion. And then you watch the video when you first wake up in the morning to immediately start programming that
Okay.
subconscious, right?
Okay.
Because you're still in that in between.
Yep.
And then right before you go to sleep, same thing. You watch it again before you go back to sleep. And then you're probably going to dream on it, even if you don't remember your dreams.
Right.
And then the next morning you wake up and you do it all again. And it's been shown to be an amazing tool that people can utilize.
Interesting. Yeah, that's funny. I've been following Tom DeLonge a lot lately in a lot of
Mhm.
his music. And so his theory essentially goes all the way back to when he was like 18 years old. And he kind of was in this band with Blink 182. And then they fell out of the band a little bit because he had gotten so far down this rabbit hole of this UFO connection, And essentially, yeah, he talks so much in all of his music about dreaming and all of these connections that he has with music and vibration and energy. And that it's
Mm.
interesting. I mean, he hasn't come out and said anything about how exactly it all lays out, but I wonder if maybe there's a connection there where he's talking about something about programming your brain to go to sleep with this, and it's going to help change the future of it. Interesting.
That's a fascinating topic, especially for the idea of artists and musicians. I was a musician for many, many years, and there is this in-depth connection to frequency and harmony that you really understand when you're in that realm. And the fact that yeah, I've never even noticed that he writes a lot of songs about dreams, but you're right, he does, now that I've
So
thought
much.
about it.
Yeah.
And that's so cool to me because your dream world is one of the most important states of consciousness that we as humans ever experience. It is
Yeah.
where we learn so much from our guides and get so much information about, all the shit that's kind of going on. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
100%. Currently, I just watched a video too about AI. I don't know if you followed along with that any, but it's getting
Yeah.
scary. I'm not gonna lie.
Well,
But like, so this AI basically was given just uber small prompts and it created this entire movie and it took like a person into the dream world where it was basically going into like this matrix and it talks like then it like started creating this entire thing where it shows the future essentially of AI dreaming and it shows that AI wants to take over the world and it's going to basically put humans into like oblivion because we have been diseasing the planets, right? Like so
right.
it's nothing but hatred and disease and like
Oh
causing global
gosh.
warming and all of these things. And so it gets a little scary that in the future, AI, if it got powerful enough, literally would look at us like a disease to this planet. It's really
Is
scary.
really scary.
Yeah.
It's totally terrifying, and I think what's even scarier about that is that so many of these, like, subliminal biases that we're now seeing crop up in AI is
Mm.
being trained and programmed by humans
Yeah.
accidentally, just from, like, interacting in the ether sphere of the internet, and
Hmm.
that's horrifying to me to think that these future AI systems that will potentially, develop sentience to a certain degree at some point are gonna be, underlying programmed with the grossest parts of humanity. Like there's nothing that'll quite take the hope out of you other than that,
Oh, it's super
But
sketchy.
yeah, like there's one thing that I will say about that though is I think that there's an interesting conversation happening around AI. And I think that yes, there's potential for it to go that direction, but I think that there's two sides to every coin. And I think there's also for the potential for it to not go that direction at all. Now the reason I suggest this is
Yeah.
because there's this amazing fiction book that is out that is about essentially the cloud became sentient. And what I find fascinating about that story, just for comparison, even though this is fiction,
Yeah,
but for
absolutely.
comparison, this story, the cloud became sentient and then became fond of all the people storing their personal and life memories within it. And it became like, oh, these people need help. I want to protect them. I want to help them. And then it looked out once it became sentient enough and it recognized, whoa, you guys don't know how to do that for yourselves. Like, you guys are clueless around this.
Yeah.
But it didn't necessarily go down the path of we have to destroy them. It was just like, you guys clearly shouldn't be in charge of managerial duties. And like, that's fine. I can handle that.
Yeah.
And I think that it's an interesting conversation to kind of talk about both sides of it, because of course there's one that I hope would happen more. But yeah, it is scary. The world of AI is wild.
Yeah, there's definitely two sides of the coin for AI for sure. I mean, it could switch and be extremely helpful. It's going to help. It will help in so many ways. People who have
Yeah.
spelling disabilities or whatever it is, they'll be able to speak
Hmm.
and just have it just done right there for them, or
Hmm.
without limbs. All kinds of beautiful things that can come out of it. It is, but however, there's been so many movies that come out that are just a little bit scary.
They are, and there's a lot of worry for me around the subliminal programming that we've already been giving through media,
Mhm.
that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where we as a collective consciousness buy into that enough that then that kind of tilts this way, and that's really concerning. And I think we should all develop ways of like subliminally programming ourselves in different ways because
Oh,
screw that.
yeah. So let's see. One other topic here. Did you hear anything more about the Peru? Did you hear about Peru? recently?
I did hear about Peru, and I find the Peru conversations really, really interesting because I hear like really opposing viewpoints of it, where a lot of people are taking this with this really like fear based thinking and like this is terrible and there's really scary stuff and they're being attacked. And there was some video that was like terrifying of somebody who had been attacked and they were really like brutally injured. And like that is, it's so much to kind of process and take in.
Mm,
And I am kind of on this fence about it because it's not that I don't believe the Peruvians, the people that are telling us this, the people that live there, the people that experienced it.
yeah,
But I think that it's easy for us as humans to misunderstand any interdimensional being and especially any collective consciousness. Because if this light being that's coming to us is a collective consciousness or a member of a collective consciousness, then it isn't going to interact with us in the same ways and it is going to seem very cold and distant and non-human
yeah,
because it is not individual. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
The pictures and the videos though were, oh my god, that picture that you posted on that
Yeah,
one video, I
yeah,
could not believe it. I was like, this is the most beautiful picture of like an angelic light being I have ever seen in my
yeah.
life.
And for those of you guys who don't know, essentially what we're talking about here too is in Peru, there's a small village that's literally been being harassed essentially for quite some time by the sounds of it, and they by beings, um, and they're claiming that they're like aliens and like lights and these creatures that are coming down harassing them and hurting them, and they're reaching out, the people are reaching out to the US government and stuff like that for help, but we have yet to come over there to do that. But yeah, it's very scary. The man, that image that you're speaking of, Sarah, is a man said he's seen a light outside of his house and he went running outside with his cell phone and tried to snap away a couple images and was able to get that. He said a lot of them were overexposed images, but he was able to get that shot there. And I think that's interesting. A lot of people too right now are just claiming like, oh, there's no proof, that's not good enough for me, I need more, like I don't understand what people
I
want.
know.
Like, I mean, the hearing just happened. People testified in front of Congress under oath, and yet it wasn't good enough for these people. They're just like, oh, and I'm like, I don't know if you guys want somebody in a green suit like to walk up and be like, yep, this is my UFO. Like,
Right. They literally want like people flagging down giant motherships to like land
yeah,
in the middle of Central Square. That's the only way that some of these people will really be able to like buy in to some of
yeah,
this, unfortunately, which is wild to me because, right, like we're having these hearings, there's a large scale national conversation happening about this, and it isn't happening with like, oh, they're wearing tinfoil hats. Like they're taking this quite seriously, you know? And people have been asking me, like, do you have criticism of how it's being handled? Do you think that this is a part of another cover up? And I'm like, according to my research of the hearings, they're doing everything I would do. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
they're going after
absolutely.
the right things. They're looking at the right questions. They're asking the right questions. And once you open the door, right? Once you suspend disbelief for just about 1 week and you read a couple of things on this and you do your research, it starts to cascade into a mountain of evidence that if
Hmm.
you're able to use our amazing human pattern recognition, you'll be able to see the recurring pattern of this stuff
Yeah,
happening. And the thing about Peru that I find really interesting is I think that this was a large scale, really important contact for the entire world to see that wasn't in the United States. And
yeah,
so many people like
yeah,
argue that it's only in the United States, the United States that's
yes.
doing it. And you're right, the United States government does have fake UFOs. I totally agree with you. However, this doesn't just happen in the United States. This does happen in other places. And I think it's kind of funny that that light being was even present in that place long enough for that guy to get enough pictures that there was one that wasn't exposed at all. And I
Right.
think that says something about what the extraterrestrial was there to do.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, because if they didn't want to be seen, they didn't have to be seen.
Right.
There is no way. I mean, they were literally coming there to show off, to say, look, we're here. And what's
Yes.
interesting is some of them, like, so Fauci, or no, not Fauci, who was it? Oh man, a little while ago,
Oh,
Dr. Greer. Dr.
Greer. Yeah.
So Dr. Greer said a little while ago that some of the aliens, most of the aliens that he knows of, that we've heard of, come in peace and are not scary. But then we get into this area where it's like now people are getting attacked. I wonder if like half of this is a setup, and like some of it, like maybe some of those are real, and then but I'm not sure
Mm,
what to think about that because if they wanted to kill us, I feel like they could, right? If they have the technology to
absolutely.
move through time. So
Yeah.
it's so interesting. I don't know.
Absolutely. I think that it's really an interesting conversation on duality as well. The idea that there is like negative or like bad, evil aliens, I think is kind of a misunderstood concept
Yeah.
because it's not that they're bad, evil, as in like any evil aliens would come here to destroy us. They just are aliens that are extraterrestrial. Dimensional beings that believe slightly differently than the other ones. You know what I mean? Like they don't
Sure.
all necessarily get along with one another, but it's not like these are higher enlightened beings. They're not going to war to destroy each other. That is the thing that they literally don't really participate in anymore, which is why every time that we have a war, all of them show up like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, like, and
100%.
all the
Yeah.
interactions around, right. And all the interactions around like nuclear testing power plants and all that kind of stuff, like they have made it clear that they don't want us participating in this. And this is like a waste of our time as a collective, you know? And I think a lot of us are taking this idea of they versus them and projecting it into space. And really that's just racism in space. Like leave it
Ah,
at the door until
very
we
well
know
said.
we can know.
Very well said. Yeah, no, that's so true. Like a lot of the alien things or interdimensional beings that we've been hearing about are around the war zones. Tom DeLonge too, I keep going back to him, but he was talking about the Cold War was the first time that we ever found a human or an extraterrestrial body, essentially. And then we moved into all of this like the war zones with the nukes where they've literally come across and shut down the entire nuclear facilities. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, it definitely is an interesting part of this conversation, but kind of because I just realized I didn't quite answer. So let me go back a little bit. As
Oh,
far
you're
as what's
good. You're
going
good.
on in Peru, you know, I was thinking that same thing. I was thinking that same thing. Is there potential that there are, government agencies that are black door that nobody knows about, that are there trying to sway the narrative on this. And I think that there's absolutely the potential for that. That would, to a certain degree, make sense. But I also think that that conversation of duality of like there's no necessarily good versus bad aliens. I think that there are aliens that we would disagree with the way that they present themselves, with the way that they interact with us, and the way that they behave around us. But I don't necessarily know that we know enough about them and their true motives to know whether or not they're really here to do us long-term harm. And I've heard lots of stories of extraterrestrial, specifically collective consciousnesses,
Yes.
who find the idea of caring about the individual really challenging. They just don't get that concept. It's
Yeah.
like to them, each individual within their consciousness is one blood cell. If we lose one or two blood cells, we're fine. It's going to be all right. And it's just a completely different perspective on existence, you know, and that would be really hard for us to quantify as human beings who are so individually motivated.
Yeah, 100%. Very interesting. Well, Sarah, I think we're gonna wrap up here. Thank you so much again for coming on and talking with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So where again can everybody find you?
Yeah, so I can be found at Too Wild to Tame. Come on over. Spirituality, aliens, paganism. Come join the fun. We'd love
Definitely,
to
you
have you.
guys go check out her page. It's literally phenomenal. She's been making a ton of videos, and I wanted to have her on here and just do a little chat and just pick her brain on some stuff. And I thought it was absolutely interesting. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah, thank you so much.